We're totally underestimated, and we underestimate ourselves, which I think is a mindset and culture thing we have in Austria, not just with startups and venture capital, but with ourselves. First, you need always to compare, over time, historically, okay, where did we start, where we are now? Think about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
No business angels, the term was not even used, the ecosystem was not there.
Nothing, and people forget this very easily. 10 years ago, no one knew what was a convertible loan, a safe. We had like 50 million in terms of investment volume, all of Austria. This is now like one company maybe.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About Tech. In today's episode, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Kambis Kohansal. Hello, Kambis.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Kambis, you have a very interesting story. You grew up in Vienna, built your own company, and today you're working for all the startup ecosystem in our Chamber of Commerce. Tell us a little bit about your background story. What drove your career in the very early days?
So sure, I was born and raised here in Vienna, Austria. My parents, 40 years ago, they actually came from Iran. They're Persians. So I'm Austrian and Iranian/Persian. And I was raised up in one of these so-called, multicultural districts in Vienna, in the 15th district, which at this point of time was quite different than what you expect now, because now you see a lot of young families going there. It's hip, it's modern. But when I was there, it was a bit different. I can remember it very well. And it was not so easy always, but also based on like what my families did, particularly my grandparents. So my grandparent, from my father's side, but also from my mother's side, they were entrepreneurs back in Iran. And also my father was a bit, active as an entrepreneur, but in a very old economy business. So nothing related to tech startups. Actually, I'm the first one in my family that went into this direction. But it always formed me a bit. And when I was studying, slightly before finishing my bachelor's study at the Vienna University of Economics and Business, I had to decide, do I want to go into a corporate, direction, or maybe, do something on my own, set up a startup, found a startup. And that's how I ended up at Whatchado, my first startup, right after graduating from the university. And it was an edutech startup, an edtech startup, which I've been active for over 5 years.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I mean, obviously, I think not even only in Austria, likely across Europe, everybody knows Ali, right? Your co-founder,
exactly,
who's still working mainly as a teacher and speaker, right?
Yeah, so it was a funny story. If you give me a couple of minutes
Sure.
of time, I will tell you. So, I was 24 and I was at the end of my graduation. And there was a career event called Career Calling. And one of my friends was graduating with me, and he convinced me to, go there, just check out what's happening there, maybe talk to some employers. And I didn't want to go in the beginning. But then I decided to go there actually to do some kind of checking my CV, making a photo, but not really into, talking with the companies. And when I went there, I saw one stand, the smallest of all the companies there. There was Jubin, which is another co-founder of Whatchado. He was there, delivering some kind of sweet food and so on. And every student was running there, even though it was the smallest stand. So I also was one of them running there, to get my piece of sweet. And then the thing is, I remembered him from one of my courses,
Okay.
He was there as well. And then I saw, okay, there's a video, a storytelling platform that actually portrays people and the jobs, in a very personal way, all of them by video. And actually, it really somewhat attracted me, because I was also not sure where I want to head to. But suddenly there was a platform that actually gave young people, some kind of guidance.
Right.
And that's how I ended up at Whatchado at the end. It was a project at this point of time, but then I joined them and later became a co-founder.
Yeah, I think it was an incredible, important, I would say even impact startup, right? Because you really helped in the decision making of young talents to find the right job, right? And to understand what they would actually go for in a job, right?
Yep.
So those interviews would actually guide them.
Yes, you summed it up really well. So the thing was, all of the founders or the core team at this point of time had this kind of issue. They knew there were career opportunities, but something was missing. All of us were not sure, and that's why we developed, our own solution based on our problem. And some of the co-founders, they were even longtime friends from the past. So it has a very personal note, which also had these disadvantages later on, which we can talk later if you want. So it was a very positive topic, guiding young people, creating impact, social, but also economic impact, to match actually good companies, employers, jobs with the right people, the young people. And at this point of time, the thing was, it didn't even start with a right business model. We just started making videos. And at one point, suddenly companies told us, hey, they're interested to work with us. They would pay so that we also portray their employees, You always had asked the same questions, very personal, not just about the job, but about the person. That made the videos very individual. And it just had a positive attitude to the whole product. And we said, okay, for every video we get paid, we produce one for free. We actually also get artists, onto the screen, even politicians, because they could also have an interesting job, et cetera, et cetera. And this was always very important for us when it comes to the business model. I would even say, now a lot of startups, particularly the younger ones, so young founders, they all already automatically try to think about ESG and SDGs within a business model.
Right.
And over 10 years ago, we actually already did this, before starting. And it's good to see now more companies and founders going into this direction as well.
I love the fact that you mentioned ESG in this regard, because ESG often people just combine together with climate challenges, but it's environmental, social governance, right? ESG.
Exactly.
And the social aspect are missing, right? There's so many impacts. There's so much impact that could be done if you would have a little bit of a social drive in what you do. So that's really great. So this company then got exited.
The Whatchado, actually, no, I missed my chance, to be honest. I exited, but I didn't sell my shares. There was an opportunity, a window of opportunity. I didn't take it. I would have taken it now with the experience I have now. But it's still, now it's an SME. It's working.
It's running.
It's running. It has a different, it's not just about the videos now. They're also very much into listing jobs and so on. They are somehow also a career platform. And there's scaled it a bit smaller, over time, because when I was still there, we were 70 people in 6 countries, capital, a lot of capital for this point of time here in Austria.
Right.
But it's not like this anymore. But it's a SME, it's making profits, it's more steady, which is also good. But I moved out after 5 years. Due to a different reason, but we also had some kind of, founders and management conflict.
Nothing wrong with sustainability and therefore nothing wrong with dividends. So with your entrepreneurial journey in mind, your experience with investors that you had, you became an investor yourself. You built a little bit of an ecosystem around yourself, right? You have a lot of initiatives where you're involved. What did you do, and how did you end up in the Chamber of Commerce as a head of startups?
That's a lot of people ask me this. How did I end up there at the Chamber of Commerce?
You're not the usual hire.
But that's a good thing about the Chamber of Commerce, because they actually want to get someone who is not the usual hire. And let's say my path was I started with my first startup, then I moved out after 5 years, then I started setting up new companies in the fields of HR and mobility. Then I started already, becoming more into investing, starting my own investments. At this point of time with, let's say, smaller cash components or even sweat, change over time. And some things I planned. I had this in mind, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming an investor, shaping, a society to the extent I can, at least. So I had a vision, but not everything was 100% planned in a very detailed way. That's also very difficult, But the thing is, the more you work and the more you are ambitious and the more you build your network, actually opportunities are created, So one thing led to the other. And I had this vision, okay, also have my let's say my own ecosystem. So my startups, the investors I work with, the organizations I work with, so they benefit, but also me. And 3.5 years ago, a new window of opportunity based on my network was opened up. It was during the pandemics. and I was involved in 2 of my companies in a management position. So I was with my thoughts totally somewhere else. Because it was about like life and death somehow for the companies, if they can actually continue working or not. And we managed to, to get like some kind of stability into the companies because the business model was impacted negatively. However, 3.5 years ago, a new job position was created at the Chamber of Commerce.
Directly below the president, right?
So the thing is
very close, at least.
Let's say it's a hybrid function. Why? Because organizationally, it's within the target group management. In German, it's called Zielgroup Management, which has different teams. One is like the startup services. It was a new entity, sub-entity created within this target group management. But the thing is, there's a lot of direct work and collaboration with the presidency, but also with the general secretary. And this has been very unusual at this point of time. So they published a job, and actually I ignored it, to be honest, because I was focused somewhere else. And I thought, okay, now they're looking for someone. It's not something that actually attracted me at this very point of time. But a common contact of both of us contacted me and told me, which I've been knowing for years now and working with him, just take a look. And I said, okay, I will take a look, because being an entrepreneur, you take a look, try to go for opportunities. And then I started like getting into this conversation with like the president, the general secretary, the lead of the target group management at this point of time. And the more I talked to them, the more I could feel somehow, okay, they're taking it seriously. They want to do something. They want to create something, not something we had in mind before when we were thinking about, let's say, the Chamber of Commerce. And I said, okay, it's like a new venture for me, just in another context. It's more political. And I wanted to go into the policy making, activities at one point of time. At this point of time, it was a bit too early for me, but I said, okay, let's try it and see how it works. And my time of entry was actually one of the most difficult ones. We had like the pandemics. We had a lot of companies very dissatisfied who were having like liquidation issues, or maybe, let's say, liquidity problems. This
was the time when we published the book 100 Startups Made in Austria.
Exactly. We had a political crisis, and it was very difficult. But for me, it was clear, okay, this is not something you can actually, if you want to have impact, it's not short term. If you're in the venture capital scene, sometimes you think a bit too short term, because you want to deliver, you want to meet your expectations. But for me, it was clear, this is midterm and long term. Some things I can do short term, but some things take years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And that's why it became better over time, also the situation. And it was after Whatchado, it was actually my first, let's say, venture, where I really felt strong personal affiliation to it. Because after Whatchado, it was very difficult for me to set up new teams where I feel like this is my team. Yeah, to some extent, but not fully. But in the last couple of years, this has changed. Also have this feeling again, that even though it's not a startup in a way we think, or maybe my own company, but still you feel welcomed, and you feel, okay, you can do and create things,
Okay. I mean, partially it is kind of your company, because with also your financing that you do as an entrepreneur, you kind of co-finance your own organization.
That is true.
At least to a tiny extent, right?
That is true. So I also somehow like funding my own salary, to some extent at least.
Yes. Which is beautiful. I mean, I don't get tax refunds that way. Now, I always explain internationally the Austrian Startup Hub as the hidden champion of startup hubs.
I love that, by the way, wording a term you're using. Yeah.
Thank you. It's I think it fits, right, for the ecosystem of Austria. Now, I know you're traveling a lot. We've just met recently in Abu Dhabi. I know you're going to Saudi soon, as this is a very vibrant region. There is programs in South Korea. There's programs in Japan. There's programs in Silicon Valley. There's pitch events from Tel Aviv over London to, anywhere. I think even Kenya now, there's it's one of those focus countries where Advantage Austria, our foreign trade missions, are pushing quite heavily. where do you see the state of the Austrian hub as a startup hub, and how do you see that Austria is different as a startup hub to others internationally? Are we underestimated, or do we need to still work on a lot of things? What do you think? What is the state of our hub?
So just to shortly sum it up, and then I will get into detail. We have still to improve in a lot of areas, like actually all ecosystems, but in some extent even more. But we're totally underestimated, and we underestimate ourselves, which I think is a mindset and culture thing we have in Austria, not just with startups and venture capital, but with ourselves. I will explain you this in a moment. So the thing is, first, you need always to compare, over time, historically, okay, where did we start, where we are now, okay? If you say from this very moment on, and then you compare with like other countries, same size, who are much, let's say, further when it comes to, let's say, investment volume, okay. But think about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
No business angels, the term was not even used, the ecosystem was not there.
Nothing, and people forget this very easily. I can totally remember 10 years ago, no one knew what was a convertible loan, a SAFE. We had like 50 million in terms of investment volume, in all of Austria. This is now like one company maybe, okay? So you need to check it historically. Sure, we could have improved and should have even faster, the fast range. But actually now we are here. We're in a spot, and I also hear it like from people abroad, who 5 years ago didn't even know Austria existed when it comes to venture capital angel investing. But now I get inquiries from abroad, from investors, from the UK, from the US, from the Middle East, who now have some kind of affiliation and say, okay, there's potential. That's one thing. Second, we need to put it more into numbers and then make benchmarking. I will give you a number. So not saying anything against Estonia, because Estonia is great as a startup nation. But if you compare, let's say, the investment volume, Estonian startups collected in 2023, it was less than 300 million. In Austria, it was almost 700 million. Still, it was a strong decrease from 2022 to 2023. But more than twice the amount of the investment Estonian startups could collect in 2024. And this is a huge number because Estonia is very, very actually strong when it comes to startups. I will give you another one. For instance, Emirates. So United Emirates, which is very interesting, by the way, an emerging hub. Also here, you would think usually, okay, Dubai, when it comes to startups and techs, it's much, it's like, wow. But if you put it into numbers, it's not like this. Also here, the total investment volume into startups was less than here, and the decrease was higher. Not meaning that they're doing a bad job, but you just need to, put it into perspective. And that's why I really like what you said about the hidden champion thing, because so not just with startups, but overall, the economic landscape in Austria is based on hidden champions. So if you put it into numbers, Austria has the fourth highest number of hidden champions worldwide quantitatively, not in relation, but quantitatively, meaning companies who are, let's say, in the top 3 of their niche and less than 5 billion turnover per year. And the same I'll also see in the startup scene here in Austria, because we have a lot of B2B oriented startups who might not like pop up somewhere, but they're very successful in the background, very successful. And usually they are not focused on Austria. We're an export driven country. So they export very fast in a lot of different countries. One is, for instance, TZ or Z, for instance, I'm not sure which is spelled right, which is also by a friend of mine. I know you're also there.
A former employee.
Former employee. This is one of the great examples. Or Loxon, for instance, in Austria, or single-use support, for instance. We have also great consumer brands like Whatchado and so on. But still, the most successful startups I know in the companies are always like B2B, more hidden. And that's what I mean when I say, okay, we underestimate ourselves. In some areas, it's totally understandable and justified. But I think overall, it's just, okay, we make us worse than we are, and we need to push it. We need to show it, show that we're not just for culture and tourism, which is good, but also in terms of tech, high tech, where a lot of things are happening in Austria.
Yeah, I think underestimating ourselves is really a good keyword. I mean, when you look at the investment landscape, even 10 or 20 years ago, those hidden champions, those high-tech companies in material science, in industrial chemistry, in machinery, right? They were highly innovative, and we had spin-off companies, high-tech startups, so to say, in this segment that we not even today calculate as investment volume into the startup ecosystem because they're so smartly hidden that we don't even recognize them as a high-tech startup because they don't consider themselves a high-tech startup, right? If we would get those numbers, and if you're listening here, give us those numbers, I think we'd have a much higher volume, right? So I would say on the more high tech, deep tech side, where it comes to hardware and real high tech, also space tech, etc. Austria is actually a great hub.
Totally, life science, for instance. So it's very much a communication and branding topic.
Yes. Now, communication branding brings me to our last topic, right? There's a lot of initiatives where this tiny country of Austria tries to bring their intelligent talent, the high-tech companies into the rest of the world to eventually make business, right? Because the local market is so small. But there's also initiatives locally that bring a lot of international investors and talent here together. To sum up for you, like, why are those initiatives so important? What kind of initiatives would you recommend? And what do you foresee as new initiatives that should start?
One of the initiatives that comes totally in my mind is one of yours, for instance, World Venture Forum. Why? No, it is because we don't have so many conferences in this type of field, to getting limited partners, potential investors, institutional investors from all over the world to Austria. And the thing is, I think it's always important that it's authentic, something that you actually affiliate with Austria. And that's why, in Kitzbühel with the mountains, this is Austria, but you combine it with innovation, tech, spin-offs, startups, and this makes it very charismatic. These are one of the initiatives we need because we need to show the world we're here. We need to bring them here. And the experience then is totally shaped in a different way. So it's not just a numbers game. It's very much about, personal relations, about emotions, also, again, this has to do with communications and branding. So on the one hand, we need to go abroad. We need to show the world we're here, brand ourselves, not just for culture, tourism. Why not for culture and tech, for instance, or tourism and tech? So combine it with tech and innovation, show we are there. People, I remember last year when we were off one of the big conferences, the Web Summit, for instance, there was a new type of branding, branding Austria's tech innovation, and people were really surprised in a positive way because they didn't think Austria, didn't affiliate Austria with something like this. But same, we need to get the people here, delegations, bring them here, show them here, combine it with our food culture, with our creativity here, show what we have here, but always with this tech innovation component. And then that's why I'm very happy that we have initiatives like the World Venture Forum. As well as also, for instance, now can I make some publicity for some of our events, like we have the Export Tag, for instance, at the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You collaborate also with Vienna Up.
I didn't mention it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. No, but it's good to mention. I mean, it's all over the place. And I know there's new initiatives also, at least you think of loud. I know it's not officially an initiative yet, but now something with the GCC, something with the Gulf area. Why do you think is the timing now right? Why should we go into the Gulf area? Is everybody there already? Are we late to the party? Are we early? What is your perspective?
So I don't think we're late to the party, but it could become too late at one point of time if we take, still several years, for 2-3 years. So if you're, let's say, in the tech and startup area, time of entry is very important. Sometimes you might be too fast, but often you're too late. And now, when we, for instance, evaluate, let's say, a region from a startup and venture capital perspective, let's say in this area, we have always different factors that are relevant. So we have, let's say, the talent, the amount of talent there. The amount of overall know-how, in terms of the infrastructure, the history, and so on, the amount of capital that is available, and the market potential within this region. And now, if you think about GCC, just take a look what they're planning. The huge initiatives they're planning, from UAE to Qatar to Saudi Arabia. They're planning so much. They want to become one of the hubs in the world in terms of innovation tech. And we have the talent here. We have the talent here in Austria. We have the startups, to actually be part of this development. And for us, it's very clear, okay, the market is growing there. They have purchasing power. They have capital. They want to invest. They want to bring out product from abroad, from Austria, from Europe to the country. So let's use this. Try to set up a funnel where we work together, be very fast, build partnerships with local players there as well, investors, startups, centers, hubs,
Right.
the local authorities. But move fast, not too late, because again, the time of entry is very important, and you have some of these emerging hubs on a global scale. And GCC area is one of these. That's why it's so important to move there. And I think startups here in Austria, they need, they really need, when it comes to internationalization, they need to start thinking much more about this area when it comes to exporting the products.
Yeah, I would recommend also to be open to co-create. We have since 6 years a joint venture with a company I even founded before Venionaire, Course Ticket, which is called Sajil in Saudi Arabia. I think the leading platform for online education. And
in Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia. We started this 6 years ago, right? Where nobody was there, right? We were one of the first ones to collaborate.
Exactly.
But what we learned is with our local partner, Abdullah Mashari, who's a fantastic entrepreneur in the region, we learned that co-creation and being open, right, and to adapt to the local circumstances is basically the little thing that you need to keep in mind to be super successful. And I'm happy that worked out. It was great chatting with you. Thanks for being my guest in this episode. Thank you guys for sticking around with us. Please make sure to subscribe to our channel and make sure to tune in for the next episode. Bye-bye.